Thanks for joining us for another Viewpoints. Today we're looking at Rolling Heights from AEG. Welcome to Tangerine Studio 3. I'm Will.
I'm Sarah.
I'm Melissa.
And I'm Kevin. And today we are talking about Rolling Heights from AEG. We're dividing this video into 4 different categories. We have components section, then our likes, our dislikes, and then our final thoughts. But before we start, Melissa's going to give us a quick overview.
Rolling Heights is a game for 1 to 4 players that plays in about an hour. It's from AEG and designed by John D. Clare. AEG Games gave us this review copy. In the game, you are rolling meeples in order to build up a city. Depending on how the meeples roll, whether they're standing, on their sides, or lying down, determines the type of action that you are taking and how powerful it is. You might be getting building materials, earning points, getting purchasing power, and lots of other things with your meeples. You're going to be putting tiles onto a main game board and then using building materials to build up your skyscrapers and buildings. There are end game goals and personal goals that you are competing for and trying to build the best city to gain the most points.
So this game, there's a lot of components in the game, so I thought, why don't we just dedicate a section to components? What are our thoughts on Rolling Heights components?
I like the meeples. I like that they're a little chunkier than some, little rounded edges to them. They feel substantial in your hand when you're rolling them, which is nice. The box size is actually pretty perfect because...
Where you're rolling your meeples in?
Yeah, they stack inside of each other for one, so you can store them a little bit easier. When you're rolling them, if it had been any smaller, it would have been a problem for me to get my big old hand into the box to get the meeple out of the corner, but there was just enough space.
Okay.
I felt like the amount of room that it takes up in front of you with all the meeples that you've collected, all your tiles that you're working on, all those pieces, like, it's not a table hog, but it is a full table-sized game. And, I mean, my favorite part is at the end of the game, it does look great.
I was going to say, we have to mention the table presence.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a city with all your little tiny different sized buildings and your little color cap on top. And I was also pretty satisfied, like, I think there's only one time during the game where I like reached across and shattered 3 towers or whatever. But for the most part, it was like, it's pretty stable.
It's not a dexterity game, but there's a little bit of dexterity going on.
Yes, you'd have to be a little careful as you're stacking those
near the end
pieces.
of the game, yeah.
But I thought they stacked well. They sit on top of each other. You have your little caps you put on. It would have been way, way, way too expensive. But if those tiles had been inset, so that the pieces could have sat down into them.
Double layered.
Double layered, that would have been awesome, but I understand it's not practical.
Double the cost, right.
So they're like single, like, Lego pieces.
Yeah.
They're not Lego, but there's like single ones that are stacking. I wish they did like lock in a little bit better.
Click.
Like,
I've heard that's super hard. Like, Lego has such a trademark thing on that
you,
even the off-brand Legos, like, don't fit as perfectly as they should.
That's just like one of the things is like, oh, that would just made it just a little bit better for me personally.
Yeah, I didn't hate that at all. I agree with you.
So that when it does actually knock over, it doesn't go
4 pieces.
It's just like, oh, I just stand it back up. So
you could replace it with Legos.
You could.
You could just put it
I thought about this after
They're about the same.
The one game. You could use the single
they're the one size.
one height. Yeah.
The outside edge has the puzzle pieces, which I always think is nice. Whenever
Yes.
you've got a board that doesn't fold, how do you keep it together? The puzzle was easy. I did like the artwork for it. That's part of the components. I think this style is fun and it actually feels a little bit like, what's the movie where like the whole world folds in?
Inception.
It looks a little Inception-y on the front cover.
Sure.
But I do like the style of it, and I thought all of the tiles that are in the game too, like it looks pleasant when it's out on the board. It looks like a city. You've got a bunch of different colors, but the scheme is nice.
The meeples remind me a little bit of Quadropolis.
A little chunkier.
And they have some of them are like see-through.
Yeah.
We also took a look at this when it was on Kickstarter, the prototype version, and the prototype, some of the colors were very similar. I think there was kind of like a black and a gray or something, but I thought that the colors in this version were all distinct and you could tell which ones corresponded to which materials, and it wasn't like, which meeple is that? I felt like they did a good job with the colors.
I appreciate you saying that, but I'm going to say something in the dislikes when we get to that.
I want to say if we're moving to likes.
Yes, let's move to likes.
Officially. I liked the color scheme, and we kind of mentioned this. There were no like primary colors. They used lots of other colors. It's my pet peeve for games that they just use primary colors for the player colors. This has lots of colors in the game. There's lots of different color meeples, and none of it was confusing. The only thing that could have been slightly confusing was there are meeples that are clear or translucent. So the coloring on those, on the printed version where it's icons or things of those in the game, is a little bit different. Yeah. But as soon as you know what they all are, it's not a problem.
I like the rolling likes. I like the rolling in the meeples. I like that it's you're doing things when it's not your turn. So that I'm getting red meeples, and there's a little push your luck going on, so you sort of have this own little mini game going, and then it gets to your turn, and you do your thing, and it's like, oh, when I'm done, I start rolling my meeples again, and you might wait a little bit, but by the mid game, you're rolling 10 meeples, and you're like, oh, make sure they're hard workers.
Yeah, I agree with that. I liked the amount of player interaction that was in the game. You're kind of fighting for spaces on the board a little bit. Somebody gets in your way, you got to pay an extra resource to hop over them and be able to add your tile. So everybody's kind of got the same goal. So you are kind of trying to get to certain places to get more points. So you do interact in that way. Also, we did this a lot. I don't know if there's actually a normal part of the game, but when the two lowest tiles on the board they get a wild token added to them each round if nobody buys one of them, and pretty consistently, Sarah was buying one of those tiles just to avoid me getting a wild tile. So even that little bit of interaction, I was like, I really wanted that one, but now it's gone, so I'll pick a different tile entirely. At the same time, it didn't feel like I was even in a 4-player game, on that whole board, I'm assuming on a lower player count, you'd have even less interaction because you're not really getting in each other's way.
Sure.
But I didn't feel like we really got in each other's way, even with 4 players on the board.
And there's ways for paying to go further if you need to, so it's not like you're getting blocked in or things like that.
I feel like the goals for the game for scoring bonus at the end
so they got some common
are different.
Goals. Yeah.
So your game
trying to do a different
strategy is going to change a lot.
Yep.
In what you need to try and accomplish, and what types of buildings or what types of meeples you're even going to try and get certain things.
You have the common goals, and then you have your personal goals.
Yeah, and I would say that's one of my big likes in a game, when there are a combination of common goals and private goals, because it gives you something to go for, but then you also have some secret stuff that you're doing.
And that not everybody else is trying to do too, so you can kind of leverage that.
I do also like variability in games, and like Sarah was saying, the tiles score differently based on your goals, but then also the tiles themselves may have scoring opportunities, or those purple-ish meeples have their own benefits when you roll them, and it might be something to do with scoring, or it might be something to do with getting benefits and rewards. So there's a lot of variability and variety that's happening in each game because there are different tiles and different goals.
There's not chaining or comboing, but there's some things that work really well together. Like Melissa's saying, there's purples, or if you're getting points in certain ways that rescoring things. I think you had one that you rescored something, and you're like, oh, that one gave me 12 points. I got 12 points again, or something. So looking at that, I think is really important, how you're going to get your points.
I like a game when you can play it the first time and you can understand it by round 2 or whatever, but then you don't feel like you've actually done everything in the game until you've played it a couple times. So in this one, I didn't even try any of the purple things in the most recent game, and I was like, oh, I gotta play it again to see if I can leverage the purple meeples, because I didn't even get to those. I was building my own little thing over here. There's more to the game than you can get in 1 or 2 plays, which is always nice.
All right, we ready to move to our dislikes? All right, let's do it. So my first dislike is going along with the colors. Some of the colors just are really close to each other, and you're not sure. There's a dark purple and the dark blue, and the colors that they're working with on the tiles.
So you thought it was closer than I did.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them. Some of them are pretty good.
I feel what you're saying. It wasn't necessarily the tile, the meeple, but it was this tile itself is a dark bluish tile and has gray slots on it. and I have purple meeples over here or whatever, so I assumed that by getting it I was going to be able to play them. On further inspection, after already purchasing this, it actually requires gray meeples,
right?
But the color scheme between the tile and the requirement were not.
So I agree with Melissa in that they're distinct enough, but it's like some of the common, like what you're saying.
It wasn't terrible. You could distinguish it. It was just like not instinctual.
Right, and they're kind of tiny. The tiles are just like Carcassonne, like regular like square tiles, and then once you are playing the game, you're like, oh, now like your brain automatically goes, oh, those are the kind of meeples I want, sort of thing. But it's not like right away.
Right, and I was like, oh, this is a yellow background on it, so it's going to require yellow meeples. Nope, that's not actually the case. It was just a yellow background onto the tile. And it's big enough that when you're sitting across the table and you're trying to like, not hold up the game, you're like, I'll just take this tile. And then 30 seconds later you realize, oh, that's not actually what I thought this tile was going to do for me. Not a huge deal, but...
And the other dislike is, we have mentioned the dexterity. I've had some games where somebody has like knocked over more than a little bit, so that can happen. So you gotta be a little bit more careful when the
players have tremors. So
the buildings are getting bigger.
I didn't like it wasn't that I didn't like it at the very beginning. Trying to understand less than 50% re-rolls on the something, and I just felt like maybe it was that I didn't read the rules, but I needed like a shortcut to show me that or something so that I could understand it immediately.
You can continue rolling until you get to 50%, more than 50% or something like that.
Yeah, more than 50% is to keep rolling, lose half of the...
Right.
Maybe I'm not good with fractions. I don't know. I was just like, every time I was like, so do I get to re-roll these? I don't remember what's happening.
When am I in danger zone and when am I getting a free re-roll?
Will just lost half his meeples.
Right.
The good news is, I will say, near the beginning of the game, when you're doing that pushing your luck, it's a little better for you to push your luck because you're automatically getting a wild token for busting. So I feel like at the beginning of the game, it's not too bad to bust. Then towards the middle to the end of the game, when you are rolling more meeples and you bust and you lose 4 meeples,
right,
getting a 1 wild, that's not good.
Right. What did you dislike?
There's a few tiles. Now, they do have a cheat sheet on the side of the tile that tells you how many in each building stack you need to have. It's printed very small.
It is. They're small tiles.
And I understand why. Because it messes up the aesthetic of the tile.
Sure.
So I'm glad they're there.
You wish
it could have been a little bit bigger.
A little better, yeah.
That would have been helpful.
Yeah, and the whole problem is really like it's not a problem at the beginning of the game when you're like, I have 2 tiles on the board. I remember that I need to add one more.
But sometimes you're building like 5 or 6 tiles at once,
and everybody else is too. So by the end of the game, you're like, I don't even remember which tile I played. This one.
They have your color on.
Right, it has a blue square on this one and this one, but I can't even see it because there's 15 towers in the way. Like you need to be able to like get up and like move around.
Yeah, it's kind of like well, I'm short, so lots of games are standing games for me. Where I have to stand to see, and this is one of those standing games.
It's the nature of the game, so it's not really a detractor. You just got to be aware, like you need decent lighting, you need to be able to move to see around stuff.
I was trying to think if I had any dislikes that haven't been mentioned already. I wouldn't put this as a strong dislike, but it's just something to be aware of. The length of the game is determined by the players and how quickly they use up certain resources. I was actually surprised by how quick our game went.
I made the quick,
but Sarah
quicker.
Pushed it really quick. So I had some long-term strategies that, like 3 turns from the end, I was like, oh no, this is not gonna pan out.
Sarah won.
Well, I was planning on. Well, I knew that one of the end games is running out of a resource or the building tile, not the tiles. And one of our end game goals was you got bonuses for putting houses next to certain things. Well, houses and parks got bonuses for being, so I was like, and most of the houses in the game are the easy 1 level.
Like the wood.
Yeah, so I was wood, I'm just going to build houses and parks, houses and parks. So that's what I did the whole time.
Resources just
I used all of them because that's what they require. And everybody else is trying to build skyscrapers. And I'm like, I just have lots of little houses and parks.
Right.
And then I end up winning because I comboed all the scoring mechanisms.
So anyway, you have to be watchful of your other players and the resource pool so that you don't commit to a long-term strategy that is going to get cut off because the game ends a lot shorter than you were planning.
Final thoughts. I think going along with that, the game, even if it's a little shorter or longer, it's not that much shorter or that much longer. They say an hour, and I would say it's right around that. It might be 45 minutes to an hour and 15, but it's not a 2-hour game.
Right.
Yeah, and that's with 4 players.
Yeah. I think that's a nice length to a game like this.
I enjoyed the overall table presence for sure. Anytime that a game like when you get done and you feel like you've made a piece of art, I'm a fan. And yeah, when you get done and you look at this whole city that's sprawling out, it's a good experience at the end, which I'm always looking for.
I felt like I accomplished something, and I was happy with what I accomplished all the times that I've played. Yes, you could get cut off from a long-term strategy. It's possible. But you still felt like you did quite a bit in the game. And it wasn't like, oh, I was building this engine and I needed like 6 more turns. I think everybody's going to end the game with unfinished tiles or buildings that they're working on. And that's just part of it. So, and there's some that you're like, I started this, but I'm just gonna ignore it. And I already got some points for it. I'm gonna focus on other things that are now better for my strategy.
I just really enjoy rolling the meeples. That is one of my favorite parts, and sometimes I enjoy rolling them too much and I bust and lose things because it's always like, but if I roll them and I get some more, sometimes I needed just 1 glass, and both of my glass meeples were lying down, so I'm like, I need a glass. I guess I'm pushing my luck because the worker that I need is not available to me. And then sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But I enjoy that. I never felt like, oh, it was ruined. It was like, oh, I didn't get as much as I could have. But I still enjoyed the process of rolling them and deciding, do I keep going? Do I have enough? Which meeples do I go for? Because they do different things and I like that variety. So I've been very pleased with Rolling Heights. I've really enjoyed it.
Cool. We should roll the meeple and see if we have a lazy worker or a...
Lazy. If I had to bet on that. Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know, did you enjoy Rolling Heights? What are your thoughts on it? Are you interested in a game of this type? Have you played any other games where you roll meeples? I've only played one. So I think that's a pretty unique mechanic. So yeah, we'd love to know your thoughts. Ask us your questions. We'll be happy to answer them. And we'll catch you guys in the next video.
Which we're going to do later.
It's going to be so great.